Welcome to St Michael's Uniting Church and to this online Good Friday gathering. I'm Margaret Mayman, Minister at St Michael's. Wherever you have come from, wherever you're going to, whatever you believe, whatever you do not believe, you are welcome here. As we gather, we acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we acknowledge other First Peoples on whose land those who are participating in this service gather. We honour their elders past and present, and their youth who hold the promise of the future. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot gather in physical proximity to one another, but we are encouraged in knowing that through this virtual gathering, we are reaching our usual community at St Michael's and beyond that, including people from other uniting churches, from other denominations, from people of spirit in Australia and across the world. There is vulnerability in this physical separation, and I'm grateful that we can connect with one another via the internet, but also conscious of people who are excluded from this form of connection because they don't have access to the technology. In our congregation, we are keeping in touch with people who can't connect via the internet with telephone calls and cards and other expressions of love and concern and connection. And so we hold the people who are not able to join us in this way today as we affirm that wherever we are not alone. We are held in the circle of community and in the love of the sacred. Wherever we are, being church happens as we reflect on the sacred stories of Holy Week, stories that form and reform us through our lives. In gathering apart, in being together, the stories of Jesus' death and the stories of the people whose lives he touched nourish our spirits and sustain us in this challenging time. In our search for meaning, for ways to live well as creators of compassion and justice, for ways to keep ourselves and others safe, the Spirit is within us, between us and beyond us. May we transform the necessity of social distancing into the grace of spacious connecting, a space that we fill with compassion and love. On Good Friday, we come to remember Jesus, the human one, the one who had dreams, who had those dreams shattered, who took time to think and to pray and to weep, who understood the risks of prophetic speaking truth to power. We remember Jesus, a person of extraordinary spiritual insight, who died a cruel death. We gather in stillness on this solemn day to remember the capacity of human beings, ourselves and others, both to suffer rejection and pain and to be the ones who cause it.
Grace of costly when lifted up before our eyes, the face of God we recognize in crucified, unfathomed love. May faith and hope within us grow, the way of Christ to tell and show, and may the Spirit breathe and flow in costly, unexpected love.
A contemporary reading, What Makes This Day Good? By Cheryl Laurie. If you have ever believed that love inevitably leads to betrayal, this day says it doesn't. If you have ever believed that some people are unlovable, irredeemable, this day says they aren't. If you have ever believed that there is a limit to forgiveness, this day says there isn't. If you have ever believed that you aren't worth saving, this day says you are. If you have ever believed that you don't deserve freedom, this day says you do. If you have ever believed that fear, anger, hate, and despair will always win, this day says they won't. And this day is good for you.
Reading from Matthew 27, verses 27 to 36. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. They then led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a person from Cyrene named Simon, whom they compelled to carry the cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes amongst themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him.
Touch a shame
happened on that Friday we now call good. It was not a heavenly transaction beyond our worldly reality. It was not the sacrifice of an innocent victim to satisfy a capricious deity with a taste for blood. No, here real people are struggling for real power. Here the moral quality of reality is revealed in disclosing that destabilizes the power of money and violence and oppression. Jesus is the lens through which we understand power now. In him we encounter the powers of the weak. Through the lens of Jesus' life and death, we assess the practice of power. The practice of power in the world expressed in social relations and in the policies of the state. Jesus exposes and threatens non-violently the powers that be, the powers of wealth, of military domination. No wonder he made Pilate nervous and the crowd frenzied. In life and death and life beyond death, Jesus revealed the divine, the Holy One, standing with the poor and the outcast. On this day, we remember the cruelty and violence with which such challenges are often met. In this time of pandemic, we watch in grief at the places of the world where people are most vulnerable to the virus because they lack the resources to maintain physical distancing and the resources to access adequate health care. We watch helpless as despots in rich countries and poor countries deny the truth that could save lives. The death and hell of Jesus' story encounter the realities of the world this Easter. We wonder what can be resurrected from this. It takes strength to stay with the story as we seek for healing, not just from the disease of COVID-19, but from all the injustices that divide our world and damage our earth. We want to look away, but this year, more than ever, there seems no other way to turn. Yet if we stay with the story, if we keep company with one another, we may discover that intertwined with the violence and the brokenness, the suffering and the grief, there are resilient threads of hope. Hope is not unjustified optimism that everything will be all right. It doesn't suppress our lament or our helpless tears. But in the company of hope, we find courage to remain at the cross and there encounter the depths of grief and loss. And in faith we say that this ending will not have the final word. In the midst of grief, we gather to remember all that the life of Jesus has taught us about the nature of existence, that only love has the power to mend what is broken in us and in our world. Only love. Amen.
Reading from Matthew 27, verses 45 to 51. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "This man is calling for Elijah." At once one of them rang and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split.
Our prayers of the people are a meditation. At the Cross by Chris Polhill. I see Christ crucified still today, where the hungry cry for food, die for food, though there's plenty. Where people are yelled at, jeered at, bricks through their windows because their skin isn't white, isn't right. Where abuse and rape occur. Where queer people are beaten up. Where lust kills love, I see Christ crucified still. I see Christ crucified still today, where war scars people, lands, God's hands, the endless killing politics of hate, where the cry for justice is unheard, oppressed, beaten down by cold world systems. Where power comes first, where religion twists faith, where fear kills trust, I see Christ crucified still. I see Christ crucified still today, where creation's fabric shreds, is bled by must have now, must use. Where earth's beauty is destroyed, where trees burn, where water poisons, where greed kills need, I see Christ crucified still. And I try, a little, to stem the deadly tide as I give a little, right to those in power, a little, take my rubbish for recycling, and try to love as Jesus said, try to love and change a little. O God, for all these crucifixions, named and unnamed, may there one day be resurrection. Amen. A poem, All My Stars, Anne Powell. Woman of the upper room, what did you tell them of your boy dead too soon? That he was mobbed and robbed by bandits for enriching others? That he was stoned and broken for mending lives? Woman of the upper room, what did you tell them of your boy dead too soon? A lump as big as the earth quakes your soul. They've killed my sun, my moon, and all my stars.
Reading from Matthew 27, verses 55 to 61. Many women were also there, looking on from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mothers of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. He then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb.
Here hangs a man discarded, a scarecrow hoisted high, a nonsense pointing nowhere to all who hurry by. Can such a clown of sorrow still bring a useful word, where faith and love seem phantoms and every hope absurd? Can he give help or comfort to lives by comfort bound, when drums of dazzling progress give strangely hollow sound? Life emptied of all meaning, drained out in bleak distress, can share in broken silence my deepest emptiness. And love that freely entered the pit of life's despair, can name a hidden darkness and suffer with us there. Christ, if you now are risen, help all who long for light, to hold the hand of promise and walk into the night.
The Cure for Sorrow by Jan Richardson. Because I do not know any medicine for grief, but to let ourselves grieve. Because I do not know any cure for sorrow, but to let ourselves sorrow. Because I do not know any remedy, but to let the heart break, to let it fall open, and to let it fall open still more. Because I do not know how to mend the unmendable, unfixable, unhealable wound that keeps finding itself healed as we tend it, as we follow the line of it, as we let it lead us on the path it knows. Because I do not know any solace but to give ourselves into the love that will never cease to find us, will never loose its hold on us, that will never abandon us, that will never abandon us to the sorrow for which it holds the cure.
Something's dead inside me, some yesterday slain. My heart is hung upon a cross, my thoughts are filled with pain, and yet there is within me a hope I can't explain. The darkness I can see God dancing in the rain, God dancing in the rain. I surrender to the mystery of loss that turns to gain. The little seed of wheat must die to become a field of grain, and I know it's in this time of grief that Christ is risen again. For in the darkness I can see God dancing in the rain, God dancing in the rain, God dancing in the rain.
A blessing that will go with us as we move from this time apart and together, the time in which we have listened to the stories of Good Friday and touched the hope in the midst of grief. Wherever you are, sheltering in place or working in the world, may the Spirit of Christ be with you and with those you love as you walk through the darkness and uncertainty toward the light of Easter Day. Amen.